Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Imagine having the keys to a fully stocked grocery store, like enough food to feed an entire city. It sounds like an absolute dream, right? Well, today we're breaking down a really intense isolation experiment designed by Mr. Beast, where a guy named Alex was locked inside this massive retail wonderland. But as we're going to see, the initial thrill of literally endless snacks rapidly turns into a grueling test of human endurance. $450,000. I mean, wow. That is the massive total amount our subject Alex ultimately walked away with, entirely in cash. It is a completely life-changing sum of money. But to earn it, he had to trade time with his family, his sanity, and a whole lot of physical comfort. This wasn't some lucky lottery win. This was a calculated, day-by-day grind that pushed him to his absolute physical and mental limits. So, the real question we are tackling today is, how do you survive 45 days isolated in a pitch-black grocery store? We're going to explore the high-stakes strategy he used, the crazy creative engineering it took to build a life inside those aisles, and the sheer willpower required to endure this completely bizarre experiment. It really is a masterclass in adaptation. Section 1. The $10,000 Daily Challenge. Now, the core mechanic here is what turns this from a fun, relaxing vacation into an absolute tactical nightmare. The twist is brilliant, honestly. Step 1, you just have to survive a full 24 hours. Step 2, you receive a shopping cart loaded with $10,000 in cold, hard cash. But step 3, well, that's where it gets incredibly complicated. Every single day you stay, you have to, quote-unquote, pay your host back with exactly $10,000 worth of store products, which then get donated to charity. And here is the kicker. If you step even 1 inch over the red perimeter line painted around the store, it's all over. On his very first night, Alex is sitting there in a corner, cooking a steak, looking at this mountain of resources, and he says, "Why would I ever leave? I could be here for years." His initial optimism was just off the charts. He really thought he had life totally figured out. But hold on to that thought, because wait until you see how drastically his mindset shifts as the days actually roll on. Section 2, strategizing the store inventory. To survive the long haul and, keep his own food supply intact, Alex had to become a master of retail economics, and he had to do it incredibly fast. So he immediately targeted non-edible, super expensive, or highly perishable goods to clear his daily debt efficiently. He realized pretty quickly he couldn't eat a flat-screen TV, so he loaded up carts with electronics. He sold back highly perishable produce before it could rot. He tracked down expensive pet food, giant boxes of diapers, and, this is brilliant, entire racks of deceptively pricey birthday cards. This let him hit that massive daily quota without sacrificing the food he actually needed to survive. And he got incredibly precise with it. On just his second day, he managed to ring up exactly $10,045 worth of dog food, just $45 over the mark. That right there proves his mathematical strategy was locked in super early. He wasn't just throwing random things in a cart, he was systematically liquidating the store's assets. Section 3, building a grocery home. Because, once you figure out the math, you still have to figure out how to actually live in a massive, empty commercial building. Weeks of super mundane isolation were broken up by creative construction projects and some big emotional milestones. By day 10, needing to get clean, he built this makeshift shower and laundry system. Day 13, he upgraded it, waterproofing it with plastic liners and reinforcing it with store shelving. On day 22, the sheer boredom really kicked in, and he entertained himself by buying out literally all the goldfish crackers in the store. And then on day 30, he hit a massive emotional high with a total surprise visit from his family. A huge turning point for his quality of life was gaining access to the store's forklift. Getting that forklift inside let Alex significantly accelerate his inventory clearing. But even more importantly, it let him physically alter his environment. He upgraded this cozy little bed he'd made out of toilet paper and literally built a reinforced house out of pallets of water bottles. Later, he even upgraded that into a literal fortress made of empty metal shelves. He was really nesting, making the giant space his own. Section 4. Surviving the dark days. But just as he got completely comfortable, the rules changed. The fast-paced honeymoon phase ended abruptly the second Mr. Beast stopped paying the electric bill. For the first 30 days, he had bright lights, working freezers, and incredibly high morale. But from day 31 onward, the whole vibe shifted. His bright, food-filled paradise suddenly became this creepy, pitch-black wasteland. Imagine the sudden dread of realizing your safe haven just lost power. The only thing still running were the cameras and the cash registers hooked up to a tiny generator,
The immediate crisis, though, the freezers shut down. The irony here is just palpable. Surrounded by an absolute fortune in food, he is suddenly forced into this panicked assembly line just to offload spoiling meat, hot dogs, and frozen goods before they rot and completely ruin the store's air quality. He had to pivot his entire strategy in total darkness.
Out of the hundreds of thousands of items in that dark, massive store, the number 5 became his absolute lifeline. That's the exact number of Instastart Quick Pack lanterns he miraculously found hidden on the shelves. Lighting these 5 little lanterns provided his only sliver of comfort and visibility during these super depressing days, kind of making the cavernous store feel just a tiny bit less suffocating. And then, absolute disaster struck. Alex had used that forklift to set up an indoor swimming pool just to pass the time. But while driving the forklift in the pitch dark, he made a wrong turn and slammed directly into it. This single, devastating mistake burst the pool, flooding his entire living area, soaking his hard-earned stacks of cash, and completely crushing his morale. It was a massive physical setback, and it definitely accelerated his desire to just quit. Section 5. The psychological breaking point. The physical challenge of having no power and living in a flooded camp was brutally tough. But the mental toll of total isolation, that is what truly broke him down. Think about it. Without sunlight, without hearing another human voice, how long before your mind starts playing tricks on you? In the later days of the challenge, Alex literally confessed, "Nothing's ever been sadder in my life, except living in a grocery store." Calling back to his day one quote where he thought he'd easily stay for years, we now see a complete psychological reversal. The novelty was totally gone. The piles of money? Just paper. He was, in his own words, just a sad, miserable guy sitting in the dark. The isolation really reached its peak when even the host, Jimmy, stopped visiting. Earning $10,000 a day sounds amazing, right? Well, until your only social interaction is an emotionless, automated robot rolling up to deliver your daily cash in a dark, completely empty warehouse. It brilliantly highlights that human connection is a fundamental need that money simply cannot replace. Section 6. The $450,000 decision. We finally reached the emotional climax of this agonizing endurance test. Alex was sitting on an absolute fortune, but he was completely drained. His original goal was a staggering $1 million, which means 100 days. But as the isolation really set in, he realized his boys' birthdays were coming up, so he revised his goal down to $500,000. But man, the reality of the dark, the flooded camp, and the sheer crushing loneliness heavily outweighed the desire for even that milestone. He ultimately decided that $450,000 was enough. Then, on day 45, the crew brought his wife in for a massive surprise visit. Standing right at the edge of the store, looking at the $450,000 he had amassed, he was faced with the ultimate choice. With his wife right beside him, he decides the money is just no longer worth another night of isolation. The prospect of making more money couldn't even begin to compete with the reality of returning to his real life. Alex finally stepped out over that red perimeter line, reclaiming his freedom and his family with $450,000 in tow. It's a completely fascinating look at economics, psychology, and survival. But it leaves us with one ultimate provocative question about the true price of isolation, one I really want you to think about today. If you were standing in the dark, staring at a massive pile of cash, but entirely alone, how far would you go? Would you have crossed the red line, or would you have stayed just one more night? Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll see you in the next explainer.